Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers-focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everybody, to Planet 76, episode 66. Got it right this time.
Yes, you did.
I just drew a blank. This is Planet 76, and we are a podcast about the Philadelphia 76ers. My name is Michael. Troy with me, as always. So close to the NBA season. Sixers start training camp, and media day, I think, is the end of next week. Not 100% sure on that. We can both check the dates after this if we want to. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. This episode, we're going to be coming very close to the conclusion of our player profile series. This episode is going to be James Harden. And after that, I'm sure you can guess who it's going to be because we haven't done him yet. But this week's going to be James Harden. So, Troy, I'll let you ring us into this one. I think this is going to be good.
Yeah, this will be a good one. Just like the last one. So, you and I were talking after last week's episode. That was like one of my personal favorite episodes that we've done, episode 65. Yeah. So if you haven't watched or listened to that one yet, it was all about Montrezl Harrell and breaking that down and how he fits into the roster, what we can, see being good, bad, and different about that move for the Sixers. So that was a good one. If you haven't seen or watched that one again, or seen or listened to that one, please do. That was one of my favorites so far.
And even if you have...
Yeah, go watch it again.
You can definitely listen to it again. And again.
So this one, James Harden, this will also be a good one. And then, of course, the next one, the big fella. And then we'll be kicking up the regular season here soon, or, talking about, our preseason outlook of the team and all that fun stuff. But James Harden. So as we know, the Sixers acquired James Harden toward the end of last season. He played 21 regular season games. They got him in the deal for number 25 on, I think, February 10th. I don't know why I know the date, but that was the date, I'm pretty sure. February 10th, James Harden became a Sixer.
Trade deadline.
Entering into his first full season with the Sixers this year, so a lot of discussion there. We'll talk about, even some concerns last year, what we expect this year, but, we're going to give a profile like we've done in the past, but this one might be a little more obvious than others. We kind of know James Harden's history in the league. We know the kind of player that he is, so a little different in that regard. But, I'll let you kind of kick that off. Where do you want to go before we get into our thoughts for the coming season, just on the type of player that he is years past and what he's been for the Sixers, and then we'll get into what he could be?
Yeah, we... kind of not similar to how we've done this in previous episodes with players with the Sixers, because honestly, for the most part, maybe not most of the roster, but a decent chunk of the roster are new members of the Sixers. Yeah. We've never seen them play with the Sixers before, so we want to look back at what they were doing with other teams. But this is a little different because it's James Harden.
Yeah.
And he's also played for the Sixers, albeit not a huge sample size, only 21 games like Troy mentioned. But we know James Harden. He's James Harden.
Right.
I don't really need to say much else. Whereas with a guy like DeAnthony Melton, Daniel House, you're thinking, okay, I know the name, but I'm not really too keen to what they actually are. So with James Harden, I think we can, in this episode at least, really focus on what we've seen and what we would like to see / what we might be able to see. I don't know if you could put them in the same category, but I think you get what I'm saying. And
let's start with that first one. Let's start with that first one.
Yeah, you want to do that?
So, just as far as what we've seen from him, let's start with the positive. So in his tenure with the Sixers, what have you liked? Like, what difference does he make on the floor?
I think there's two camps when it comes to James Harden in a Sixers jersey. One camp being, he's horrible. Not he's horrible, but, he was really underwhelming. The Sixers should have traded for somebody else. I've seen plenty of that, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. The other camp, I think, is a little more moderate in terms of the perspective and the lens through which they view James Harden. that's where I kind of find myself as well, of being of the mentality, perspective, whatever word you want to use, that Harden was really good. He just wasn't great. And that's okay. Because when you say things like that, you need context.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball requires context at every level of the sport, especially when you're talking about the NBA. The game requires context. In this scenario, context would allow us to see that, hey, James Harden wasn't really looking like himself. I wonder why. You dig a little deeper, oh, he was dealing with hamstring issues. That could be a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Acclimation
Yeah.
to a new team could be a factor. You can't just say, oh, well, James Harden wasn't great, and that's it. You need context. There's got to be a reason he wasn't playing great, right? Yeah, there was quite a few. So when you kind of break things down from that perspective, I think it becomes a lot easier to understand what we saw from James Harden instead of just looking at it at face value. Because like I said, he was really good. He was still very good, especially as a playmaker. Maybe we didn't see the scoring that we would have liked to see, but he still commands the attention from defenses that we like to see and that the Sixers very much needed from James Harden, the guy you traded for. The Sixers at the very minimum needed that, and they got it. So obviously the scoring isn't 100% there. It wasn't 100% there, but I want to hear your thoughts too. But we'll transition to after this point. I think a full off season, really working and really getting things situated is going to be really beneficial. And one thing I made a point to note, I think I said it in June or something on my page. I said one thing James Harden needs to do this season: take every measure possible to fix whatever's going on, whether it's a hamstring thing, whether it's acclimation to workload, whatever the case may be. Get that right now. Get that right. Because the Sixers need you to be right for the season.
Yeah. I do wonder how much some of the stuff he was dealing with played a factor in his performance. And again, we're talking about it, or it can almost come off as like, oh my God, James Harden better get better. This is a guy who in his time in Philly, so again, 21 games, he averaged 21 points and he averaged 10.5 assists, 10.5 assists a game in a Sixers uniform. You'll take that every single day of the week. What I will say though is, so we saw him in a small sample size, regular season, 21 games. I think the first 21 games, if you can say that, or the first 10, 15 games are going to be a pretty big, strong indication of where James Harden is health-wise, where he is just, again, with an off-season under his belt, with a training camp under his belt, with a, preseason under his belt, with all of that, and just with more time to gel with this team, to gel with some of the new players that come in. James Harden isn't even really a new face on this team anymore. It's these, bench players that the Sixers have brought in, and PJ Tucker in the starting lineup. So I think I'm excited to see what James is going to do with the first 15, 20 games of the season. I think it's going to be an indicator of where he's going to be for the whole season, barring any health issues and all of that. So to give some numbers here, I saw this, that the Sixers offensive stats pre-Harden and post-Harden last year, they went up significantly in some categories. So the offensive rating improved, whatever that means. I don't know all the numbers that go into that, but their offensive rating improved with Harden. Their 3-point frequency went from 26th in the league, so their amount of times they're taking a three, to 14th, about middle, bottom of the pack to middle of the pack.
Basically doubled.
Right, just in 3-point frequency. And then the one that sticks out here, I think, is transition frequency and half-court efficiency. So they became a team that really, really slowed it down, really didn't get out in transition, went from 15th in the league to 27th in the league with Harden. And you're okay with that because of this next number. Their half-court efficiency was 4th in the league. So not only were they slowing it down and playing frequently in the half court, but they were having success with it for 4th best in the league as far as efficiency there. So just some interesting stats. But again, I'm excited for Harden's first few games and to see where he is health-wise, where he is in shape, and all of that.
What was
So let me ask you this. So,
oh, go ahead.
Go for it.
I was going to say, what was the offensive rating numbers? Because I think the offensive rating is basically points scored plus or also added into something else. It's one of those advanced stats I'm still trying to really understand what that is, but I think it's team scoring. What was that number? The increase, or what was the base number?
So they only went from 14th to 10th best in the league, but the number is 112.1, and they went up to 118.6.
Oh wow! I think league average.
Some
is
of those numbers are
110.
like points per X amount of possessions. Some of those are
Yes.
like that kind of thing. Either way, they improved. The free throw rate stayed from first in the league to first in the league, although it did go up significantly.
Wow.
With James, coming in. I mean, that's a guy who, gets 8-9 free throws a game.
Yeah.
Paired with Embiid, that's a scary duo. Obviously from the line, they both knock it down at a high rate from the line. So I have a quote here from Daryl Morey. I just want you to give. We've talked about the hamstring, but even some context to the second half of this quote. So Morey is quoted this summer in the offseason saying that the hamstring for James is in a great place. And he said in the same quote that we don't need the James from 5 years ago. I think you and I understand what he's getting at, and I think most people do, but could you explain even that? Do you support that? What does that mean? Does that mean so what does that mean for what we do need from James? Because I would love for James to produce at a very high level, but what does it mean that he's not going to produce like he was 5 years ago?
I would love to just sit down with Daryl Morey one day and just chat. Not long, an hour tops. Just, I feel as though I think very similarly to him and kind of his philosophies and things. Obviously, I'm not Daryl Morey. I'm not saying that, everyone listening, but I've said a lot of things that he says and I agree with, or that he goes on to say. And I think I mentioned that a couple months ago, whether it was on here or on my page. The Sixers don't need James Harden to play how he did when he was with the Rockets. That's not what they need, because the makeup and the trajectory of the entire roster would look totally different if James Harden just took 40 shots a night and the entire offense revolved around him. The offense revolves around Joel Embiid. You're building around Joel Embiid. And James Harden, while yes, he complements that, is not there to shoot 40 shots a game. If anyone's doing that, it's Embiid, but he should not be doing that. That's a whole other story for another day. Right. You don't need that kind of production from Harden anymore. If the team was built around him, again, different story for a different day. But we need a James Harden who's going to put pressure on the defense consistently. He has that still because he's still a threat to score, and the defense still has to adjust.
Right.
Now, he's still very capable in that department. We know that. He needs to do that. He doesn't need to score 40 a game. He might a couple nights, possibly. Him and Embiid go off for like 80. That would be amazing. But we're not.
Yeah.
We aren't and shouldn't expect. We aren't and shouldn't be expecting that, because that's not who James Harden is anymore. He's more of a creator, if you will. He's not the same type of scoring player that he was, if that makes sense. He's not the guy that you're gonna be like, all right, James, we need 40. That's not him anymore. He's a shot creator. He's a passer. He's, again, a guy that's putting pressure on the defense, collapsing the defense, making plays for his teammates, for himself, whatever the case may be. They don't need that anymore. And Daryl's 100% right, like I said. So I 100% agree. And I think most Sixers fans are pretty much in agreement, whether or not it's been stated by all of us. I think I can speak for most of the fan base when I say that, Daryl is 100% right.
Right. Yeah, and we get it. To me, it's just kind of interesting, and I agree with you. I agree with Daryl. It's you don't see that said every day of any NBA player. Oh, we don't need LeBron from 5 years ago. We don't, it's just not that common
That's
of a
the thing.
thing to say
Contextual. It's context.
about someone who's so productive still.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You think of I don't even know. Like, it's not like the Lakers were competitive at the end of Kobe's career, but if someone were to say, we don't expect Kobe to do what Kobe did 5 years ago or at the end of his career, you get that, but Kobe wasn't as productive as James Harden is now. I could be very wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. James Harden is productive, very, very productive NBA player, whereas someone like Kobe or Carmelo Anthony or whatever you want to say,
I think Carmelo might be a better example.
Of a former star. Carmelo Anthony might be a better one. A former star where it's duh, we don't want the same Melo from 5 years ago. But James Harden is going to be a guy again who's going to give you low 20s in points and double-digit assists. That's a productive NBA player in whatever prime of his career. That would be nearly every NBA player's prime of their career would be to average 21 and 10. So it's it's kind of interesting to say that about a player who's still so productive. Because out of context, and if you don't know what James Harden's career looks like now, you think, oh, we don't need the James from 5 years ago. That means that he can go out and average 10 and 6. But that's not what James Harden's going to do. Is kind of what I'm getting at. So yeah, I agree with you. It's not because the team's not structured that way. We're not relying on him to do that. But a lot of it is also related to the fact that he probably physically can't be that guy anymore. And as Sixers fans, as a Sixers fan, I'm okay with that because I know what he can still bring to the table. Yeah. Because I think if you apply that to a lot of other NBA players, a quote like this, we don't need so-and-so from 5 years ago. What you're saying is that they really can't be that productive anymore, which I don't think is the case at all with James Harden. And I don't think Daryl means it that way either. But it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm not Daryl Morey, but I can almost guarantee that Daryl doesn't mean it that way, and he means it in the best way. He means it in a constructive way because,
right.
And I think James knows it too. If the 21 games that we saw from him was any indication, I think it's very fair to assume that he understands that, hey, I'm here to be a secondary creator. I'm not here to steal the spotlight. I'm not here to steal from Joel Embiid. I'm here to complement him.
Right.
I'm here to give him what he needs in a pick and roll partner, in a pick and pop partner, whatever the case may be. I'm here to make the game easier for him. I'm not here to get my points. And it all ties together. This team isn't built around me. This game isn't. I'm not trying to, dominate the game. I'm not trying to dominate the ball, if you will. This is Joel Embiid, and I need to compliment him. My skill set complements him well. I need to really tap into the playmaker, passer that I am, and do my job. Do what I was traded to do, for to do. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, and I think even to sum up my rambling from a moment ago, because I was thinking how to sum this up and then we'll move on. But and Daryl's saying that we don't need the James from 5 years ago. Daryl is saying that we don't need James to be productive in the way that he was 5 years ago. We need him to be productive in a new way, the way that's going to best fit this team, even to what you're saying. So, yeah, it's cool, and we saw that in a sample size last year. But so given all that, what are some? And then we'll play a little fun game. What are some realistic expectations for James Harden this year? First full season with the team. Whether it's numbers-wise, whether it's just, from a leadership standpoint, whether it's from, he's going to put them in position to make a deep run in the playoffs. What's some realistic expectations or goals for James this year?
I like to really tread lightly when it comes to realistic expectations because for the Sixers, realistic expectations don't exist. Whether it be for a player or the whole team, when you set even the perfect, most realistic, ideal expectations for them, they don't make them. They don't meet them. So personally, I like to tread lightly when it comes to expectations for this team. But in a kind of more broader sense, I would just like to see Harden replicate what he was doing last season while being a more aggressive scorer. Now, I'm not saying, again, I want to be extra crystal clear here. I'm not saying he needs to shoot all the time. But I think he needs to... I think I would like to see him really interpret the game in a way that allows him to understand when to score and when to pass. Because I think one thing last season was sometimes he was a little too shot happy, and other times he was a little too pass happy. Whereas a mix of both would have allowed him to have a more productive game, more productive stretch of games, whatever the case may be. I would like to see Harden replicate what he did last season in terms of numbers, in terms of production, while also just being a bit more concise when it comes to scoring and passing. And I have something coming on my page, kind of like not hot takes, not really bold predictions, but kind of a mix, maybe not so much. You'll see. It's coming soon, so this kind of plays into that, but yes, to summarize, that's what I would like to see. Hopefully.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. And that's some of what I would say too. And I think that's gonna happen. You know, I don't care who you are, to come in 3/4 of the way through the season and kind of, even if you're James Harden, Kevin Durant, LeBron, to come in 3/4 of the way through the season and know exactly what your role is and when to be aggressive, when to look to pass first is hard. Yeah. It's just difficult. And again, I don't care who you are. So coming into a full season where, I mean, he's the guy, on the perimeter that is the guy for this team. And, you add Tyrese Maxey to the mix too, of course. But I think that's going to allow James to feel comfortable and to know, when in games to be aggressive, to look for his, but also to know when to dish it out. And thankfully, James is a guy who knows what he's doing. He's
thankfully
he's such an amazing playmaker. And I think in the grand scheme of James Harden's career, he doesn't get enough credit for that. The last number of years, couple years he has. But he's very, very good, and to your point, I just hope he knows when to do what, and to me, that's a realistic expectation that he's going to step his game up in that regard, more so being his first full season with the team. All right, let's play a little fact or cap to close this one out. Fact or cap, James Harden edition. I don't know if you have these in front of you, but the last one, there's 4 of them. The last one is my personal favorite because there's a lot that can play into that. There's just a lot there. I'm so proud of myself for coming up with that one.
You should be, dude. You did a good job with these outlines.
Fact or cap, James Harden will lead the league in assists per game this season.
Wow.
So, if you want some context, again, he averaged 10.5 in Philly. He finished second in the league behind Chris Paul total last season. I believe that's a true statement. So, fact or cap, he'll lead the league in assists.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say cap, but he will be very close. He will be very close.
Let me add an additional one here. Factor cap, James Harden will lead the Eastern Conference in assists per game this season. Factor cap.
But the guy that might win is in the Eastern Conference, so I don't know.
Who?
Trae Young.
True.
So I'm going to say also cap. If Trae Young was in the West,
Okay.
if he got traded to the Spurs instead of DeJounte Murray getting traded to the Hawks, then
Yeah.
we'd be having a different conversation.
No, well, we hope you're wrong. So we'll
Yes,
come back and watch
I'm
this.
wrong. I hope I'm very wrong.
8-9 months. All right. James Harden. Factor cap. James Harden is one of 3 Sixers All-Stars this season.
I need it. Fact.
All right.
But the thing is, though,
we liked it. We love that.
the Sixers are going to have to be, what? A top 2 seed by February? I mean, I can see it, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Could happen. It's an interesting one.
I'm gonna say fact.
Okay. Number 3, James Harden will score more than 21.0 points per game this season. Again, that was his average during his time in Philly. So factor cap, he will be over 21.0.
Fact. I'm very confident in myself and my answer, of course. And James Harden.
Okay.
Fact. Yep.
Okay. I think you're going to like this one. It's going to explode your
gosh.
brain. I'll give you even
just
time
saw
to
it.
answer this one. So, fact or cap, 7 Sixers players will average 3 or more, 3.0 or more 3-point attempts per game. Fact or cap?
Fact. I don't need the time.
Fact. Okay. Now
Here, I'll
name
name them. Ready? Here we go. Embiid, Harden,
7 of them.
Harris, Maxey, Tucker. Wait, I'm trying to put my microphone down. Who else the Sixers have? Niang.
Okay.
I want to say House.
See, this is where 7 was.
No, maybe Melton. Maybe Milton. 6.5.
Okay,
Can I do
that's
that?
the 7 I was thinking. So that's the 7
Okay.
I was thinking was Melton and Niang off the bench. And the reason I think that's such a tough question, so
It is a tough question, though.
Niang, so there's some obvious ones in there, of course. James Harden, Niang averaged like almost 6 or something this year. Tobias Harris is just over 3 last year. Joel Embiid's just over 3. PJ Tucker, believe it or not, last season in Miami was like 2.7.
I thought he shot 4 per game.
But I think he gets over.
Oh, actually, no.
I think he was
Maxey.
low
That's Maxey,
in
yeah.
Miami. Maxey's around 4, but PJ Tucker was just under 3. There's some guys hovering around 3. DeAnthony Melton was over 3. So that's one almost to look back on. So that's 7 guys. If it's only 3 per game, that's 21 3-point attempts, not including other guys who are going to shoot 1 or 2 a game. So that's a fun one.
That's cool. That's interesting to think about.
I think it's fact too, because I think that again the 5-6 guys are guaranteed, and then I do think PJ Tucker is going to get over with his role on this team this year. Melton is kind of the X factor, and it was funny. You and I kind of went through the same progression in our head, and I had the attempts per game in front of me on these guys, and I was kind of still going through it. But like the last one was Melton, and it's kind of cool how you did that. So because that's exactly what it looked like in my head when I was doing it. So. All right, well that's factor cap, but yeah, that's an interesting one to keep an eye on, because again, it's a James Harden episode, but that one wraps around James Harden too, because he's going to be the guy dishing the ball out. So, it all ties together. Anything else related to Sixers guard James Harden?
No, I mean I think we pretty much covered most of it, and obviously we've talked about him on episodes in the past. I think we've had our fair share of James Harden discussion, just overall critiques and things of that nature, and I just want to see what happens. I think I said that for the playoffs too, but we know how that ended, so hopefully this is a little different in terms of actually good things.
So I got one more question. You answer this, and then I'll answer, and then that'll be it. So who do you think a Sixer starting lineup, bench, doesn't matter, benefits the most from playing with James Harden, and they can't beat Joel Embiid?
Dang, you know what? Actually,
a player not named Joel Embiid that benefits the most from playing with James Harden this upcoming season.
It's a good thing you said no Joel Embiid because that would have been an easy answer for me. I'm going to say Tyrese Maxey.
Okay.
How about you?
That would have been. I almost said without saying Joel Embiid, no Tyrese Maxey, but Tyrese Maxey, yeah.
Okay, what if we don't
I
include Tyrese
like
Maxey?
to think this is.
What do you think?
To me, it's the next obvious answer is Tobias Harris, and that's what I hope the answer is.
Same.
Like I don't know if it's going to be true, but I would love to say that.
Same.
Someone else that I don't know why it keeps coming to mind. That one of those Sixers I'm most excited to see play this year is DeAnthony Melton.
Very much so.
Now how James and how he'll benefit from playing with James Harden, I don't know. How much time he'll be on the floor, I don't know. But I'm excited to see him play. I think he just adds a lot to the team, and I'm excited to see him play. So, but we've already done our player profile on DeAnthony Melton. You can go check out that episode a few episodes back. But this is episode 66 of Planet 76. You can hit that subscribe button. Give us 5-star rating.
James Harden is a Sixer.
Looks like for you to help us out. James Harden is a Sixer. Still fun to say. 7 months later. So yeah, we'll see you next time on Planet 76. Peace. Are you on Instagram? Why don't you go give us a follow at Planet76 Podcast so you can be in the know when we drop new episodes. Thanks for listening to this one, and we'll see you next time.